I recently did an interview for my other podcast that I co-host called Beyond Jaws with Guy Stevens, who is the founder of the Manta Trust. We talked about how he started studying manta rays after he received a bachelor's degree in science, and he started studying them while working for an eco resort in the Maldives, or a number of eco resorts in the Maldives. He used what was around him to follow his passion, not knowing where it was going to take him. Now, Guy operates a globally recognized NGO that has done some great work with manta rays and devil rays. This example could be you. I want you to think about your passion in marine science and conservation. And I want you to think about how you can get started right away by doing that. That's what we're going to talk about on today's episode of How to Protect the Ocean. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. This is the podcast where you find out what's going on in the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about your marine conservation journey and how you can get started on that journey. And I'm going to tell you why I'm covering this today, because I've been inspired. That's right, I am sitting here in my office in Burlington, Ontario, inspired by some of the people that I've interviewed over the past couple of months and some of the people I've watched just around, like on social media and stuff, being able to do cool marine science stuff that they've always wanted to do because they built their own path. They didn't just get jobs, but they built their own path. And I'm excited to see this kind of stuff because, you know, we have a problem in marine conservation and science where there aren't enough jobs, or there are jobs available. They're very difficult to get, but there's not enough funding available. So when you go for a job, it's very temporary. It's contract work. You have to move a lot of the times to address, you know, where everything is. So you have to pay to move a lot of the times now. You have to go to a different state, a different province, a different country even, and you have to make new friends. You're away from everything. And you're doing a job that you may or may not want to be doing, but you're doing it because you have to. You have to pay the bills. You have to get a job. You're an adult now, and that's what you're supposed to be doing. But you may not love that job. So now you've moved, or you've done a new job, you've gotten a new job, you've moved across the country or moved to a different country, not knowing the people around you, not knowing the city that you're living in, the town, village, wherever. A lot of times when you're marine conservation, you're in a remote area. It doesn't have a lot of the values that you want to have in an area where you can actually, you know, grow up, maybe start a family, or not grow up, but grow old, start a family, and so forth. So it's not perfect. Right? There's a lot of problems with the way we do marine conservation now and the way we build our careers in marine conservation. And although I think, you know, it's still rewarding to get jobs to build experience, and you may find that, you know, your passion and do the job that you want. I know many people who've done that. There's room now, and there's the technology now to be able to create your own path. And it's not an easy path. You know, the people who have done it, the examples I'm going to talk about today, you know, have probably had a lot of problems and a lot of challenges that they've had to face over the years, especially going out of business or having to stop doing what they wanted to do, including myself. But we're doing it, and we're happy that we're doing it. It may not look like you think or what I would think sometimes, but we're still there, or we're almost there, or some people are already there. And everybody has their own journey in this path, but I think it's a rewarding one. Because, you know, life gives you ups and downs no matter what, whether it be for a job, whether it be for your own job, but it's what you make of it, right? It's really what you want to build. And if you want to build something that's different than what the model is now, that's what you do. That's what you are going to have to do and to make you happy. And so today I want to talk about the importance and the benefits of, and even the challenges of creating your own path. I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm also going to use Guy Stevens as an example. And I'll use another person that I interviewed that he just actually released on Beyond Jaws podcast, an episode with Austin Gallagher and his story, which you can hear on the Beyond Jaws podcast. But the important thing here is these stories may not match what you want, may not match the path that you might face. You'll have to do that yourself. That will be unique to you. But it doesn't mean you can't do it. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, right? It's all up to you in what you want to do in your future. But some people just have it in them. Some people just see a different way of doing marine science and conservation, and they go ahead and they do it, right? And once they do it, they're happy. They're happy that they've done it. Whether they've succeeded or not, at least you go down the path where you don't regret, right? And that's a good path to be in. And so what I'll do is I'll start with Guy Stevens, because I mentioned him at the beginning of the podcast. Now, the interview's not out yet, and it'll be out in a couple of weeks, maybe a week from now. Almost a week, just over a week. Yeah, not this Monday, next Monday. Regardless, you can check it out on the Beyond Jaws podcast. Just follow, subscribe, whatever you'd like to do. And a guy started off really, a really interesting life. He grew up in the UK, went to school, got a university degree in Bachelor of Science, and then moved out to the Maldives, where he worked as a tour guide and a researcher in the Maldives. You know those jobs that I think I've talked about where I'm like, oh, be careful of these jobs, because there are a lot of eco resorts in the Maldives that hire a marine biologist to, educate people, their guests, on tours. They do snorkeling. A lot of them now have actually their own research programs. They do a lot of great things. He did that. And, the jobs where you're like, I'm not sure if this is real. Like, I'm not sure if I should be doing this, traveling all that way to the Maldives in what could be a dream job, but could be a difficult job as well, because you don't know the lifestyle. And then all of a sudden you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing out here, if it even exists. But it does. Apparently these jobs do exist. And Guy was doing that. And he kind of, would go do these snorkeling tours. And in the Maldives, they have manta rays. And he was, he saw these manta rays and he's like, this is it. These are the animals that I want to know more about. And at the time, there wasn't a lot being, studied on them for what he saw. And so what he started to do was start to learn about them more and study them more and be out in the field with them more. And then what he did, he worked for the resort, and he's like, he went to the resort, and he's like, hey, look, I want to spend more time with these animals, researching the animals, and gathering more data and being able to educate people on there. Plus, I'll know where they are at every point in time, so I'll be able to direct the guests and the boats to where they're going to be, and then the guests will be able to see manta rays almost every trip. And so the eco resort was like, that's great, let's do that. And they funded him to do that. They paid him to do that. And so he started to gather a database and gather information on them. And then it just kind of grew. He's like, hey, let me do this full time, and I'll start like a little organization. And I'll do this full time, and then you can bring out to resorts. And the resorts started funding this information for, more knowledge, more education on their tours, and he would be able to do more research. So he found sort of in his surroundings, he found a way to pay for him spending more time with these animals. Great work. Very resourceful. That's probably the hardest thing to do, is be able to get paid to do what you love to do and to do this type of research. Great. Awesome. Now he's on his way. Then he started to look outward. He started to look outside the Maldives and saying, hey, where do these animals go? And he started to look, Maldives are right south of Sri Lanka and India. Started looking there, and he started to say, hey, people are actually fishing these things and they're eating them, or they're making things out of them, or whatever they do. I think they were looking for their gill rakers. And so he noticed that, and he said, well, there's a problem here. We need to do some more research. And then sort of the Manta Trust, that's where the Manta Trust was born. And he started to look outward more and look at globally how much research is going to be there, and made collaborations, did this, did that. Next thing you know, 15 years later, boom, he's got a globally recognized organization, the Manta Trust, that has a lot of collaboration. It has about 12 staff, a dozen staff, and is doing, funding and doing research all around the world. The thing is he did that not all on his own, but he started that. He used the resources that were around him to kind of figure out how to do this more often. And then he started to get guests would say, hey, we're going to donate to this. The resorts were going to donate because it provided value for them. And he essentially created his own path. And now I'm going to talk about Austin. I think I've talked about Austin. I mean, Austin's been on this podcast before. And I just interviewed him on Beyond Jaws with my co-host, Dr. David Ebert. Lost Shark guy, by the way. we had a great conversation about how Beneath the Waves started. It started as a a music, or not a music festival, a movie festival, like a film festival of researchers while they're out, or graduate students while they're out in the field, to take videos and to kind of vlog their way and make and create films from it, and to tell the story of their studies. That grew as Austin did his PhD, his master's, then PhD, and then graduated with that, did a couple of postdocs. He started to see Beneath the Waves as a mechanism for him to do research and for his colleagues to do research, but also to tell a story. There was always that video component, that storytelling component, part of that organization. And so he started to hire videographers and storytellers and marketers and researchers, and they all love to be out on the boats and doing work in the Bahamas, on the east coast of the U.S., northeast coast of the U.S., in Turks and Caicos, in Japan, and all these other places. And he was having a great time, still is having a great time doing this kind of work. And he's made partners with like GoPro and hotels and all this kind of stuff. And, he's done some great stuff. Been on Shark Week and so forth. And so he brought Beneath the Waves, helped bring Beneath the Waves along with the other staff out there, helped bring Beneath the Waves into, again, another world-renowned research organization that has done some great things, not only in shark research, but also in deep sea research, as well as blue carbon research. And he did that. There were some ups and downs. We talked about it in that interview. There's some ups and downs. But he's working through it, and he continues to work through it. And it's his passion. It's his love for marine science and conservation that is fueling this work that he is doing. And it's succeeding. The other story I wanted to tell is the founders of the Minorities in Shark Science. Now, MISS, the organization, was born out of some turmoil, I guess you could say, in 2020, when we saw a lot of black people in America. Sort of like, it seemed like an increase, but it was really more publicized. Black people in America being persecuted by the police, being killed by people who are racist people who didn't want Ahmaud Arbery won, and then George Floyd, of course. But in the middle of that, there was and I forget the gentleman's name, but a black gentleman who was at Central Park who was looking for birds. He was a birder. Right? He was, birders are notorious for going to parks, looking for birds, having like a little book that they write their, the species that they've seen, and that goes in on their bucket list and so forth. And they're very avid, conservationists. They're very avid explorers and birders, of course. They want to look for birds. Anyway, this gentleman was in the Central Park. This white woman was scared of her with her dog, scared of him. And decided to call the police and made up the fact that he was, quote unquote, assaulting her. The story broke. Thank God, he was okay. She ended up getting fired from her job, and I believe she got charged for a false police statement. But what came out of that was an insurgence of black ornithologists, black birders, that kind of came out and said, I'm a black birder. There are a lot of birders who are people of color. And so we had more and more people come out on Instagram. There was an account, I believe it was Black Birders account, and they would, the people who created that account, it was a number of different scientists and birders who would kind of tell them about themselves. And so it's like, I'm a black birder and this is my name, and I'm a black birder and this is my name. And it would continue and continue and continue. I remember interviewing Carly Jackson, who is one of the co-founders of MISS, and she was saying that during that time, she's like, well, I wonder if there are other marine biologists, like black marine scientists. And so she kind of just put it out on Twitter. It's like, we see this black bird thing. I'm a black marine scientist. Are there others out there? And people started to, essentially raise their hand on social media, on Twitter. And 4 women got together, became friends through marine science, through their culture, through sort of their skin color, essentially, and their culture, and saying, hey, we should stay together, and we should provide opportunities. We should create an organization to provide opportunities for other people of color, women especially, and minorities who want to not only go into shark science, but go into marine science. And and MISS was born, the Minorities in Shark Science was born. And of course, I'm paraphrasing a lot of the stuff that went on, but you can check out the Carly Jackson interview we did a couple of years ago on Speak Up for Blue. But it's, they created their own path, and it hasn't been easy by any means for them, I'm sure. But now they've started to have trips where they're bringing out young women of color from in high school so that they can get sort of like an inspiration, but also experience out on boats doing marine science work. They've done it for the last 2 years, I believe. And it's so far, from what I know, it's been highly successful and probably inspired a lot of women to go into shark science and marine science in general, which is great. But they created their own path. I believe some of them are working full time on this organization, which is, in 2 years to get the amount of money that you would require to have full-time staff is absolutely amazing. And they're doing great things. And then I'm going to talk about my journey, because my journey has had some ups and downs. And of course, I can talk to it more on a personal level. But it's, something that I wanted to do. And I didn't even know I wanted to do. I've always wanted to go into marine science and conservation. And I thought I wanted to do research, which I still love research. But that's just not in the cards. I'm a marine biologist that lives in Ontario. So I'm very restricted in what I can do from here, without traveling all the time. And something that I love doing, as you know, through How to Protect the Ocean and what used to be Speak Up for the Ocean Blue, is be able to talk about all the different stories and topics and projects and people, and talk to the people that do these projects in the field of marine science and conservation. And I just did it. I just started talking about it. Whether it be on YouTube videos or podcasts and so forth. And I made a name for myself. Not a huge name, but I carved out a little area for myself where I can now speak to you on a regular basis, 3 times a week, about marine science, about conservation, about how we can do better and live for a better ocean. And it hasn't been easy. A lot of times I'm doing this at night. Right now I'm recording this. It's 10:15 at night, Eastern time. And I'm tired. And I've got a hockey tournament to take my daughter to tomorrow and on this weekend. And so I have to do 2 episodes in a row. And so it's not an easy journey for me, but I love it. It's my passion, and it's created opportunities for me. And it's something that I love to do. I would love to do full-time one time and earn enough money to be able to pay myself, as well as other staffers to do this journey with me who have the same kind of vision. And one day I'll get there. I'm pretty confident of it. But until then, I get to do what I want to do. And like I said, starting this and continuing with it and working through it has provided me with a lot of opportunities. And I feel like that's the same for you who's listening to this and being like, I've always wanted to do this, but I haven't been able to find the job to do what I want to do. Well, maybe, just maybe, you don't need to find that job. Maybe you can come and use your dream and be like, hey, I'm going to create something that's going to allow me to study this, or allow me to, go into this a little bit easier. And that could be a lot of different things, and it could look a lot of different ways. I know there's when you talk about it, say you're trying to do what Guy Stevens did and study manta rays. Well, to start an organization in manta rays may be difficult if you live inland U.S., right? Or on the wrong coast, or where you don't see any manta rays, or you don't have access to a boat, so you can't go study them. Well, maybe you can talk about them. Maybe you can start something socially, like online, digitally, to be able to talk about them and build up that effort to be able to do more research on them. You may not have to go to school to be able to create this. You may not have to get a job specifically in that to get this. You may be able to create your own organization. You may be able to, just from an idea that you're passionate about. And it may not look, your first idea or what you're able to do may not look of what your dream is right now, but you could build to that. It's almost like when I talk to people about their careers and I say, you have to set a career path so that you know where you want to end up and how you can get there. Well, it's the same thing with your entrepreneurship journey, right? In marine science and conservation. It's the same thing. You want to look at your dream. What's your dream, right? And work back from that, reverse engineer it into, how do I get to that dream? So for me, is to have an organization, a company that talks about marine science all the time, whether it be podcasting, whether it be YouTube videos, all online. And how can I build that so that other people can join me to doing that and we can monetize it? That's the dream, to be able to talk about marine science and conservation full-time, monetized, making money off of it, but also helping organizations doing that. That's what I'm trying to build. It starts with a podcast, maybe a YouTube channel, maybe doing a couple shows here and there, doing some coasts, doing some collaborations, doing some traveling a little bit, right? But I got to set out that plan. I got to have that dream of what do I want it to look like? And it may change on the way here and there, but that's what I need for it to look like. I need to have that dream in hand. I need to have that goal, and I got to reverse engineer, how do I get to that goal? So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about what you want to do and how you can do that, how you can get there. What do you need to start? Start small and work through it. Look at what the resources you have, because everybody's going to have different resources. We all come from different backgrounds, different places around the world. We don't have access to the same things. And so we have to work up to it and be able to use the things and the resources around you to build what you can now to get to what you want to be in like 15 years or 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. That's what you got to, that's what I would suggest to get there. But just go ahead and do it. Fiddle through it, especially at the beginning. Fuddle through if you have to, using all these words that I'm kind of making up. But do you could plan it out if you want, if you're that type of person where you need to plan, or you can just throw it up against the wall and see what sticks, right? But the idea is just start. And it kind of reminds me of the video where, I forget the name of the actor, the guy who was in Transformers, but he was, I don't know if he was doing it sarcastic or what, but he was just like, just do it. Just do it. Do it. And it was that video going for 10 minutes of him just saying, just do it. Just do it. It's like, just start. Just put something out. Do something different, right? Build something that you can build to really change and carve a path for yourself. Not take the path of others, but carve a path for yourself. And I would love to hear your ideas. I won't share them, I promise, on this podcast. I'd love to hear your ideas of what you would like to do and see maybe I can help you to get there, or to help you kind of find that vision, help you plan that vision out to see how you can get there. I love talking about this kind of stuff, and I love helping other people do this kind of stuff. No charge, of course. I just want to hear what you have to say. So hit me up on Instagram, DM me, How to Protect the Ocean. That's my handle, at How to Protect the Ocean. I would love to hear from you. I would love to just see what you have in mind. And if you need help, I'm more than happy to direct you in the right direction. But I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. It's very important for me that you enjoy this and listen to this and share it with somebody that you think would enjoy this type of content as well, as this is my dream and what I'm trying to do to not only help people and maybe change behavior of people and make people aware of how to protect the ocean, but also leave a legacy for myself to say, hey, this is what I did. Here's my audience that I was able to build over the last 8 years, or 7.5 and 8 years. And they enjoy the content, and that's what I love to do. So thank you so much for listening to this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.